We now move then to questions from the public. Thank you. Question number one, Mr. Morfitt of Brainton. Good afternoon, Mr. Morfitt.
Good afternoon.
Over to you.
My question is, the majority of public supporters for this bypass are expecting a solution to city congestion. Where can I find the consultant's report on the Hereford bypass with detailed real-time traffic analysis that shows how much the traffic flows in the city are expected to improve based on current modelling to 2032? And I'll point out I found one which suggests travel time across the city will increase by 8%.
Councillor Price.
Thank you, Mr. Morfitt. Surveys were carried out in 2016 and 2017. This data will be published shortly. The Council's consultant will then progress the modelling of the transport movements in and around Hereford to assess the transport effects and benefits of the proposed scheme. When completed, this work will form part of the business case for the project and further consultation at preferred route stage. This is currently programmed for the autumn of 2018.
Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Morfitt?
Yes, I do. How can the public trust this council with respect to the environment and the population's best interest when the very same council has for years ignored the threat to human health and wildlife from the toxic waste that was dumped in its own backyard? I'm referring to the toxic waste that leaks from Sutton Walls waste dump, which according to the Environment Agency contains toxic materials and carcinogens. This liquid was not contained by any recognised impermeable barriers, but left to leach through the gravels and into the groundwater of the Lug Valley and down into the River Wye from 1971 until the present day. No clean-up was attempted and no reports were issued to warn the public, despite the collapse in the salmon migrations that followed, and in fact, not one mention of it was made in the technical reports discussing the environmental impact of the road building on the eastern corridor. How can we trust a council that failed to address this very real threat to the wildlife and our population's health?
Thank you, Mr. Morfitt. Excuse me. It wasn't strictly related to the first question. However, I will turn to the Cabinet member responsible. The probability is he would have to wait for a written response to such a lengthy question. Cabinet member.
I'm totally sorry. That's the first I know about that. Okay, we're working out. I've just been prompted then, bearing in mind 1971, I believe it was probably another council rather than Herefordshire. This is the first I know about it, this is news to me, and as the leader is just inclined, we'll more than likely respond with a written reply.
The last survey was done in 2013 and 2014, which showed vinyl chloride in the groundwater in the Lug Valley from that dump, which has been leaching for over 40 years, and nothing has been done about it by this council.
That may be so, Mr. Morfitt, but that still doesn't prompt me, and if I don't have an answer for you, you can ask me again, I still won't have an answer for you.
It's worth looking up.
We'll send you a written response, Mr. Morfitt. Thank you. Question number 2 is from Mr. Thompson of Hereford.
The question from Mr. Thompson is as follows. Has the Council carried out a comprehensive costing exercise at current prices for each of the prospective routes for the bypass, without which it would not be possible to make a valid comparison between the routes?
Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you. Fairly short answer to this. Cost estimates for all of the route corridors are set out in Appendix 2 of today's Cabinet report, and these will be further developed as work progresses. Thank you.
Question 3 is from Mr. Shepherd at Hereford. There.
Mr. Shepherd's question is as follows. As the council has stated that the new SEN will only require half of the old Broadland site, and they have also stated that the remaining site can be used for further educational facilities, will the council not offer some of this space to the outstanding nursery already on the site on favourable terms to allow them to remain in the area?
Councillor Brainer.
Thank you. We're working with Bright Sparks to identify and to enable them to continue to provide their valuable service to preschool children and their families in the area. Any decision on the future use of the remaining old Broadland site will have regard both to the council's need to be accountable for how it uses its resources under its stewardship and to the corporate property strategy which sets out how we will use the property assets to deliver our priorities.
Thank you, Councillor. Question number 5 is from Miss Milsom of Hereford. I beg your pardon. Mr. Trimble is question number 4. Is Mr. Trimble here today? My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Trimble. If you'd like to read your question.
My question is, 5 of the shortlisted 7 possible bypass routes will cross directly through the site of Hereford Community Farm. The resulting closure of this facility would affect 64 weekly attendees with disabilities and their families, and the loss of 20 employees. What guarantee does the Cabinet give under its equality duty that impact on people will be measured and included as part of the detailed consultation process?
Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Trimble. This process of determining a preferred route for the bypass from the shortlist presented in today's report will include further assessment of impacts of each of the shortlisted routes and consultation feedback. I would encourage you to provide a detailed response to the upcoming consultation, and I can assure you this will be considered as further assessment work progresses to select a preferred route for the bypass. The decision to select a preferred route will be informed by an equality impact assessment. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question?
I do, yes.
Thank you.
The report on the recommendations for the proposed shortlist of possible bypass routes, section 5.1.8, states that the future work will identify the merits and challenges of each route corridor in more detail, seeking ways to maximise the benefits and mitigate any adverse impacts. My question is, who will be carrying out this future work? Whom will they be accountable to? And is this Cabinet prepared to guarantee that it will be a fully inclusive and transparent process in its entirety, i.e. that it will include the 64 people, their families, staff and schools who attend Hereford Community Farm, and not clearly weighted in its interpretation in favour of delivering the Cabinet's preferred outcome?
I will try to give you an answer to that because
Take your time.
yes, we will certainly take note of the consultation responses that are put in, and I urge you, as I add in my question, to please put in your full reasons for what you're asking here, so that we can actually take on board exactly what you're saying. Because without that impact, and I would actually like you personally, if you can, to come and have a conversation with me about it, so we understand more better what it is you're asking of us. We will absolutely be transparent in what we do, and the Cabinet and the Council will take responsibility for making the decision, but our consultants and our designs and the Council officers will together, including us, come to a conclusion as a result of all of the input from the consultation. It is most important to you and your concerns about the Hereford Community Farm that you ensure that we are aware of the impact that will happen to you and your facility if we were to choose one route as against another. And please be aware that we do intend choosing a route, and it is up to you at the consultation to make sure that we are aware of your concerns. So please come and have a conversation with us, and I will make sure that is held with officers present so they understand your concern.
And how do I go about that? Just contact you directly?
Sorry?
Do I contact you directly?
You can do, but it would be better if you were to send it to the Assistant Director, Richard Ball, who is sitting in the back over there, and he will arrange that for you personally to have that contact with us.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trimble. Question 5 is Miss Milsom of Hereford. Is Miss Milsom here today? Good afternoon, Miss Milsom.
Good afternoon. 5 shortlisted possible bypass routes: Eastern Wide Viaduct Crossing, bisect Hereford Community Site, Warren, leading to loss of this crucial facility supporting disabled people. NPPF Core Planning Principles 17 states plan making and decision taking should take account of and support local strategies to improve health, social and cultural well-being for all. How will the Cabinet guard against the loss of this valued service?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Milson. I refer you to the response to the question above, and hopefully that in that consultation we will deal with your concerns. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Hereford Community Farm currently provides the equivalent of 6,885 days per year of social care placements for children, young people and adults living with disability, long-term health conditions and mental health issues, crucially filling the gap left by closure of other services due to funding cuts and provided at no operational cost to the local authority. In its assessment of mitigating any adverse impact, and especially in light of the proposed 4.9% increase in council tax already announced to meet the rising cost of adult social care, will this Cabinet guarantee that the social and financial cost of the loss of this service will be fully measured and documented in its consultation report?
The answer is yes. It follows on to the previous question and supplementary question from Mr. Trimble. And yes, first of all, we would try to mitigate any loss of the service, and we need to have more detail, and I'll open it to you as well if you are involved in this project, to be part of that feedback with the Assistant Director and officers and myself, so that we can understand exactly what you're trying to do and how we can mitigate any impact as a result of a road being chosen. So hopefully we can all get together on this and deal with this in a proper, transparent fashion. Thank you.
But the financial cost will be fully included.
Until we know exactly what we are talking about, because we haven't heard your full representation on this, I cannot guarantee that we will be meeting all financial costs, but we will be dealing with it in a transparent manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trimble. Ladies and gentlemen, we've now used the 15 minutes normally allocated for public questions, but given the level of interest obvious here today, I've decided we'll continue until we've heard all public questions. So the next one will be Ms. Toynbee of Hereford. Is Ms. Toynbee here today?
Ms. Toynbee's question today is: the HTP consultation report suggests greater public support for park and ride and improving bus services than for a bypass. Will the next stage of consultation explore this in more depth and provide estimates of the cost and timing of park and ride versus costs of the bypass, so that taxpayers can compare the relative value for money?
Yes, thank you.
You can't hear a word of what's being said. Your loudspeaker system is totally inadequate. We don't have a ring here for those of us who are hard of hearing, and people must speak more clearly, and I would suggest that Cabinet members, when they reply, stand up to do so. It would make life easier for us. Thank you.
Cabinet members will not be standing up. we've asked them on previous occasions, given the equipment that we use, to sit down and hold it fairly as close as sensible to their mouth to try to get the best reception for the public that we can. But I do take your point. We will ask Cabinet members in their responses to speak clearly and appropriately slowly. Thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you. It's not a case of either or. Extensive analysis and studies undertaken identify that a bypass, together with other improvements in the city centre, are required to meet the objectives of the project. Park and ride in place of a bypass would not. The upcoming consultation will enable us to gather views on the emerging proposals and will shape the kind of measures that could be delivered with the bypass, which could include park and ride if appropriate. Thank you.
The question number 7 is from Mr. Geeson of Hereford. Is Mr. Geeson here today? Oh, I beg your pardon, Dr. Geeson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Is Herefordshire Council aware that all the chosen bypass routes would destroy the iconic landscape of the River Wye at Warham, depicted by the internationally renowned artist Brian Hatton? At particular risk are the London Plain and a turkey oak in a painting titled The Lawns from 1908. But there are also many paintings of a number of adjacent meadow and river scenes that have not changed in over 100 years.
Thank you, Dr. Geeson. Appendix 2 of today's Cabinet report contains a detailed report corridor assessment framework. This sets out how a long list of routes has been assessed across a range of criteria to develop a short list of routes. This includes impact on the River Wye and Warham, amongst others. The results of this will form part of this consultation. Consultation feedback and further detailed assessment work will be undertaken following the consultation to determine a preferred route for the bypass. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Dr. Geeson?
I do, yes. In Brainton's neighbourhood plan, policy B9, Greenbank Meadow at Warham, which is the site of the Hatton trees referred to earlier, was designated as local green space. This meadow is the Queen Elizabeth II field managed by the Herefordshire Wildlife Trust. Drovers Wood and Green Lane in the path of the black and grey routes are also designated local green space. Does Herefordshire Council believe that its choice of bypass routes should trump policies in neighbourhood plans?
You have to put this in the context that the wider acceptance of a bypass for Hereford, if there was no other way of getting that bypass route selected through an area of landscape, that I would suspect that many people would say, so we must be able to progress for the projects that we are having to deliver. So if the neighbourhood plan for Brainton has a very good policy that says we must look at the options available to us, we will certainly look at those options. I am not familiar exactly with policy B9 in the neighbourhood plan for Brainton, but we will look at it, and I will ask the officers in due course to make sure that that is part of the consultation going ahead as to whether or not it has a major impact on route choice. But thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we will make sure that we look at neighbourhood plan B9 for Brainton and to see whether or not we can mitigate route choice from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Geeson.
Thank you for that, but I am very surprised to learn that you haven't looked at Brainton's neighbourhood plan before.
The next question is Mrs. Moss of Hereford. Is Mrs. Moss here today? No, actually, read the question, please.
Could you explain what is the risk to the council in respect of Bright Spark's tenancy? Please note that we are an educational establishment and have been on site for over 40 years and are happy to provide training to all ages and care and education for children of employees of the proposed new school.
Councillor Bramer.
Thank you. The risk related to, referred to, relates to the delivery of the special school project rather than a risk to the council itself. Until the future accommodation of Bright Spark's nursery is resolved, the risk remains. I'm sorry that the description of the risk is unclear.
Thank you, Councillor. And question number 9 is from Mrs. Palgrave. Is Mrs. Palgrave here this afternoon?
No, she's not.
No?
The bypass consultation report gives cost estimates of 129 million to 146 million, presumably for a single carriageway road. How much more for a dual carriageway, and how will council fund the highly likely overruns on these estimates? Norfolk Council, for example, is paying 28 million more for the Norwich Distributor Road on an agreed budget of 179 million, with lead councillor Martin Wilby commenting on a project this big, unexpected costs are inevitable.
Thank you for the question. The cost estimates for the short list of routes are set out in the corridor assessment report in Appendix 2 of today's Cabinet report in order to provide a basis for comparison. These will be further developed as work progresses and the standard of the carriageway throughout the various route options is specified. I cannot comment on the Norfolk scheme the questioner refers to, but would emphasise that in any large project, cost estimates will invariably change as the project design develops to inform a decision on a deliverable and costed option. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Question number 10 is from Mr. Hans of Lower Brainton. Is Mr. Hans here? Good afternoon, Mr. Hans.
Good afternoon. My first question, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and esteemed colleagues are seeking to build a large number of new homes, which invariably will increase the number of car journeys and pollution into the city. Can you tell me when the last series of air pollution tests carried out on all major roads entering into the city centre was done, and what research has been done with traffic light flows to lessen pollution from stationary vehicles?
Thank you, Mr. Hans. Monitoring of air pollution is undertaken monthly at about 15 locations across Hereford and hourly at a continuous monitoring station on Victoria Street. We publish on our website an air quality status report which considers all this monitoring data and assesses this against the national air quality objectives. This report also considers any major changes in the county that may have an impact on air quality and reviews the progress of measures to improve our air quality. An air quality management area is designated along the A49 corridor through the city, from the Belmont Road Asda roundabout to the Homer Road Newtown Road roundabout. Relevant monitoring data is published on our website annually. Traffic lights within the city centre are controlled by a computerised management system which seeks to smooth traffic flows to minimise congestion. The city centre is at times a severely congested network, and the Hereford transport package, including a bypass, is a key part of the council's strategy to improve traffic flows and air quality. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question, Mr.
I do, Chair. Councillor Price, at the last Cabinet meeting, you stated you would fight for the Western Bypass Relief Road, and I would add Link Road, whilst you still have breath in your body. Did you watch the recent programme on BBC 2, Fighting for Air, where it was stated 40,000 premature deaths are caused by air pollution, increases to heart attacks and asthma attacks due to air pollution, and more importantly, the effect on children's arteries and lung function. I've already asked about the recent pollution study, so I'll leave that piece of the question out. But, pardon me, with the impact on people's health, in particular children, Councillor Price, you appear to put your ego, impartiality and desire for the Western Relief Link Road above the health of Hereford residents, and in particularly, more importantly, the children and grandchildren of people living in Hereford. Is your conscience clear, as the buck stops with you, as you are the Cabinet Member for the current infrastructure portfolio, that children and even their children will not be impacted by your decision and stubbornness to pursue this relief link bypass?
Thank you for that. No, I didn't watch the BBC Two programme. Sorry?
You should have. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but you cannot tell me what TV programmes I'm going to watch.
It is
However,
relevant, Councillor, to your
Mr. Hans,
to
you
your
had your
knowledge
question.
and to
You
your
should be
decision
quiet
making
and
of
don't
this
wait for an
council.
answer. Mr. Hans, you will get no answer unless you give the man the opportunity.
I did not watch the BBC Two programme that you referred to, and that answers that part of that question. However, I am fully aware of my stubbornness when I get into something, and I appreciate your concerns, but we are trying to progress this bypass to alleviate the air quality in central Hereford, to address the issues that you are addressing. But furthermore, do you really believe that in 25 years' time there will be anything but electric-driven vehicles or some other modes of transport that will not include diesel engines, petrol engines that are spewing out all of the various P10 or whatever you want to call them in the future? So my conscience is absolutely clear. The businesses of Hereford are demanding that we do something about another bridge across the river, and that we deal with getting the heavy traffic out of the city centre. Every meeting that I have on infrastructure projects, including the Hereford Area Plan, reference time and time and time again from all quarters that if we do not have a bypass, we cannot implement any of the traffic measures that we need for sustainable active public transport in the city to alleviate exactly what we're trying to do. And my conscience is absolutely clear, and I will stand until I fall over, that I believe that this bypass is designed to aid air quality and congestion and traffic flows, whether it increases, decreases, whether it's electric or diesel or petrol or any other form. I am not moving on this. I am absolutely committed to this, and I'm sorry I'm so stubborn about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hans. Question 11 is Mr. Geeson. Is Mr. Geeson there? Good afternoon, Mr. Geeson.
Good afternoon, Leader. My question refers to the Hereford Transport Package report on your agenda today. Only one of the 7 consultation questions included in the report even mentions a bypass. This question deals solely with factors important when choosing a route. 612 people responded to the question, less than 42% of the 1,467 questionnaires completed. Yet the report says there is broad support for the principle of a bypass. How does it justify this statement?
Thank you, Mr. Geeson. The aim of the Phase 1 consultation was to increase awareness of the Hereford Transport Package proposals, planning and design process. Feedback received demonstrates that overall there is broad agreement, 93% amongst respondents, that traffic conditions in Hereford need to be improved, demonstrating the importance of transport infrastructure improvements. Studies have established that the appropriate transport improvements to deliver our objectives are a bypass with a package of walking, cycling, public transport and public space improvements. Further consultation will allow people to provide feedback to confirm if this is supported. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Geeson?
Yes, thank you. Paragraph 34 of the Hereford Transport Package report in front of you refers to funding. The number of serious road accidents in Herefordshire has risen in the last 2 years. Already this January there was an accident at Bridge Solars resulting in one seriously injured person being helicoptered to Birmingham, and another at Dinmore Hill resulted in a death. How can the Cabinet justify using the severe weather reserve to fund further consultations and consultants in the light of local accidents?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last sentence? Thank you.
I'm asking you, Councillor Price, how you can justify the use of the Severe Weather Reserve Fund as part of the funding package proposed to fund consultants and consultations when people are dying at an increasing rate and being injured at an increasing rate on our roads. Maybe you'd like to consult and tell me if not.
I think that would be a very good answer. Thank you for prompting me to say that. I'm not going to say anything that would suggest that this is being used in a way or not that I'm not familiar with at this moment. So I will give you a written answer on that if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Geeson. Question 12 is Mrs. Wade-Prosser. Is Mrs. Wade-Prosser here today? No. Claire, if you would.
Why were the relevant HAP consultation responses reported on by WSP in August 2017 on travel plans, leisure use of River Wye, pollution and climate change excluded from the Appendix 1 consultation report and not taken into account in Appendix 2, which deals in a partial and highly selective manner the preferred 7 route options?
Thank you to Mrs. Wade-Prosser for her question. The consultation report included in Appendix 1 of today's Cabinet report summarises the responses to the Hereford Transport Package questions of the Phase 1 consultation questionnaire. Responses to the Hereford Area Plan questions are available on the Council's website and will inform the further development of the Hereford Area Plan. The assessment, which has informed a short list of routes sets out in the report in Appendix 2, has been done in accordance with government guidance. Further consultation will allow people to provide feedback to this short list, which will inform further assessment to determine the preferred route for the bypass. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor 13 is from Mr. Wallace. Is Mr. Wallace here today? Good afternoon, Mr. Wallace.
My question: what financial and/or contractual impact will the liquidation of Carillion have on Herefordshire Council, as one of its contractors, Balfour Beatty, who will have an exposure of £45 million as a result of being in joint ventures with Carillion?
Thank you, Mr. Wallace, for the question. I do not anticipate any implications for this contract, and the Council has received assurances to that effect. Herefordshire's contract for public realm services is with Balfour Beatty Living Places. Balfour Beatty Group has stated that exposure is limited to joint ventures with Carillion on 3 projects. These are the Aberdeen Western Peripheral Route, the A14 in Cambridgeshire, and the M60 Junction 8 to the M62 Junction 20 schemes. Whilst there may be some subcontractors in the supply chain working for Balfour Beatty Living Places, which may also have supplied Carillion, the risk associated with this indirect impact is considered to be low, and we continue to monitor the situation. It is reassuring to note that the share prices for Balfour Beatty remain stable, a usually good indicator of the market confidence in them. Assurance can also be given that, should the circumstances change, the payment requirements set by our contract that subcontractors be paid within 20 days of them having presented a valid invoice should limit our supply chain's exposure to such financial risks insofar as they relate to our contract.
Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Wallace?
I do. As a result of the mismanagement of contracts by government and local authorities, is Herefordshire going to take the lead by appointing a council officer of the right calibre and experience to manage and control the Western Relief Road, or the future, if there is another option, to protect the residents of Herefordshire against a Carillion type disaster?
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. I'll be pleased to provide a written response to your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. That concludes questions from members of the public, and we'll then move to item 6 on the agenda, which is questions from councillors. Question 1 is from Councillor Matthews, Credenhill Ward. And if I could just ask if Councillor Matthews will make it clear whether he is asking this question on behalf of his group or as a ward member.
I can assure you, Leader, I'm asking on after myself, Councillor Crockett and most of the other independents who've always strongly supported the Eastern route, so you know where we stand on that. Could I, with greatest respect to Councillor Price, suggest that he shows a little bit more tolerance and respect to those people over there? You're not being affected by this, but their lives and surroundings have been totally destroyed.
Can I suggest, Councillor, that you ask your question?
Right, thank you. The government announced recently that it is fully committed to ensuring greater protection of the environment, in particular areas of outstanding natural beauty, close or adjoining residential areas. The beauty and tranquility of Brainton area fully meets that criteria. Do you agree that it is extremely unlikely that ministers will look favourably on the proposals before us today, bearing in mind the above and cheaper options available, subject to the other points raised today here?
Councillor Price.
No, I don't. Herefordshire is a beautiful county. We are committed to supporting improvements in the quality of our natural environment while bringing forward quality developments that enable sustainable growth to meet the needs of the county. The Council's adopted core strategy recognises this route as the best option available, and there is no cheaper deliverable option which would secure the same outcomes. Any decision on a preferred route will be informed by a wide variety of factors, including environmental impacts. I am confident that by following the appropriate guidance and using our evidence base, our proposals will progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. And question number 2 is from Councillor Crockett. Is Councillor Crockett here?
Thank you, Leader. My question to the Cabinet Member is, I must remind you that Wye Valley is a special area of conservation, Europe's highest level of environmental significance and importance and protection. The river running through Brainton has the same environmental importance as the Lug Meadows, which for some reason you appear to have difficulty in accepting. Why aren't you considering the cheaper option for the bypass, which would fully serve the same purpose? I've raised this question as I was emailed by several of my constituents regarding this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Price.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I fully acknowledge the environmental importance of the river running through Brainton. The facts are that, as demonstrated through the core strategy process, the route corridor identified is the best option available. There is no cheaper deliverable option that would secure the same outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. And that will now take us on to item 6, the Hereford Transport Options Consultation in Phase 2. And I think
Excuse
it's...
me, Leader, could I have a supplementary to my question?
I beg your pardon,
Sorry.
Councillor. Please do.
Thank you. Do you think you're taking significant notice of our local businessmen and listening to their concerns?
Absolutely, and I have to say that the majority of businessmen that I speak to or contact me or general conversations over a number of years is that I do not speak to many that do not want to progress a bypass as quickly and as efficiently as possible and to get on and build it. There is a pent-up demand by businesses in this county to get and deal with this issue. It's been ongoing for many, many years. We now have a perfect opportunity to get on and deal with it. And if we don't take this opportunity now, well, I don't know where Hereford businesses will be, because every place I go to in meetings, businesses are telling us we must have a bypass to resolve the issues that they are having as regards investment, growing their businesses, and just the day-to-day running of their businesses. So yes, I do take notice of businesses, and overwhelmingly they are telling me we must progress. Thank you.
I was going to say for completeness, but just for information, Councillor, I have personally been round to all of the major businesses in the city, and that it's exactly what they say. It is vital to the growth. I just remind councillors and the public that by 2020 we will lose government grants altogether to be replaced by business rates. What would have been 100% is now down to 75%. And we have got to make sure that in future we are self-sustainable. This route is evidenced by the demand and the expressions of interest in every major business that I've been to. They have to have a bypass. There is no cheaper alternative. Thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor. And I now move to item number 6, which is the Hereford Transport Package, and ask Councillor Price to introduce this item.
Thank you, Leader. This is a fairly short introduction. Cabinet, there has been a talk of a bypass for Hereford for as long as I can remember. In 2018, there is a real appetite, both locally and regionally, to improve connectivity to the West Midlands, South Wales, and consequently the rest of the UK. To create the infrastructure to facilitate business growth, build new housing, develop better options for walking and cycling, and try to alleviate Hereford's traffic congestion problems. There is no denying that having a major trunk road through the heart of our city is harming our communities as well as the environment and can no longer be sustained. Our communities are frustrated at motorists using unsuitable country lanes in an attempt to beat traffic congestion on city routes, and those living in the city are forced to walk their children to school along main roads which suffer from poor air quality. We hear from our businesses that expansion is hindered by poor transport links, citing unreliable journey times and a lack of resilience with just one major river crossing in the city as the reason they can't locate or expand their business in Hereford. Indeed, we will not be able to fully develop the county's prestige enterprise zone without new infrastructure. A cap on any further development is fast approaching at that site. We cannot deliver the number of homes and jobs that we set out in our core strategy without new infrastructure. We will only be able to deliver half of the homes we need, which will have the devastating impact of the vibrancy of this city and our ability to retain young people here. Without new infrastructure, we will have no chance of delivering our ambitious plans to establish a world-class university in this city with all the benefits this would bring to city and county economy. Without the bypass, and in effect it becoming the trunk road, we will not be able to deliver the walking and cycling facilities that will be necessary to make the city a place of sustainable active travel. I wholeheartedly believe that the Hereford Transport Package will improve the lives of all our residents and create the environment for economic growth. I am delighted that the Hereford Transport Plan is a priority for the Marches LEP and Welsh Government. The Hereford Bypass is also a priority for the Midlands Connect Regional Transport Strategy. The chairman of the Midlands Engine, Sir John Peace, visited Hereford only last week to see for himself the urgency that this project demands. We are working closely with Highways England and the Department for Transport, as the bypass would provide an alternative to the A49 through Hereford. We are some way down the path to delivering the first stages of the bypass. The Rotherhithe Access Road was the first phase, and the Southern Link Road, which is due for construction in 2019, marks the second phase. Extensive work has taken place to develop the next phase of the bypass to complete the link to the north of Hereford, since we consulted on the scheme in April 2017. We are now able to consult on a short list of proposed routes for the bypass and possible improvements, which would form part of a package of complementary measures, and this consultation will be an opportunity for all to shape how we move forward. I would urge you to support the recommendations of this report. I'll now hand you over to our two officers that are dealing with this, Richard Ball and Mairead Lane. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. To add some points to what you've just said, the report sets out is in two parts. First part dealing with the feedback from the consultation held last year, trying to give some detail of the way in which people had responded to the questions at that time, looking at the issues and problems in Hereford, what the objectives of the transport package should be, and how we move forward, and also with making people aware of the design and planning process that this project will go through. The second part of the report sets out in detail, and indeed there's a full assessment report appended to it, the process that we've gone through alongside the assessment of the consultation feedback. And it is a sifting process, a long list to short list sifting process. It confirms as many as 24 routes within the core strategy corridor were looked at, no geographical basis, so looking at what was possible within that corridor, right from one edge of the core strategy corridor to the other. All of those were compared and scored, and indeed that assessment is set out in an appendix to that corridor assessment framework report for comparison process, and then were subjected to national planning policies. And of those, the assessment of the planning policy removed some routes which would not be technically viable and shouldn't be progressed further. And that is what has taken us to our short list of 7. It's recognised that these corridors will have impacts and benefits and will score and perform better across criteria than others, but all are technically viable at this stage and should be considered. And it's for that reason that the shortlist is recommended within the Cabinet report and recommended that is taken further for consultation to enable feedback, detailed feedback on each of the route corridors.
Thank you, Mairead. Cabinet members, questions or observations? None? Councillor Shaw.
I just wondered if the officers would like to say something about the current commitment in respect of the measures for complementary transport measures alongside the bypass.
Thank you, Councillor. One of the messages that we received at the Phase 1 consultation was an appetite to understand what sustainable transport measures could be delivered alongside the bypass. So alongside the assessment work we've been doing of bypass routes, our consultants have also been looking at possibilities throughout the city centre and we'll be presenting at the consultation, subject to this decision being taken, the kind of proposals that can be delivered when bypass is constructed that will enhance routes in the city and enable people to consider making short journeys on using different means, walking, cycling, public transport, and indeed looking at ways we can improve the public realm of the A49 area and the routes into the city centre when the bypass is constructed.
Councillor Harlow.
Thank you, Leader. This question really for Councillor Price. Earlier today I had a meeting with Yannick Kaczynski from the university. He was updating me on the exciting plans that they have to develop that over the next 5 years. Next week I've got an Enterprise Zone board meeting, and the Enterprise Zone is likely to be full up in the next 2 years, which really highlights the fact that Hereford's economy is booming. Now, Mr. Kaczynski mentioned that approximately 10 to 40% of graduates from his university are likely to stay local. And part of the plan is that a good proportion of those are likely to start up new businesses. Would the Cabinet member agree that without the infrastructure being invested in over the next 5 years, that we will struggle to keep Hereford's economy booming to the extent that it currently is?
There's a very short answer, is that we have to have the infrastructure to meet the demands that are going to come forward in the very short term. And I don't think I've met anybody yet that has not been a supporter of the university coming into Hereford. We had a Hereford area plan meeting yesterday that addressed many things, but one of them is how does the university grow in the city of Hereford with its potential demand of thousands of students in the future. I understand that they need between 850 and 1,000 pupils to break even, which is their first hurdle to get to. Now, this is going to have a very big demand on the very sort of sustainable and active travel measures around the city to enable the university to function. Now, just adding 2 and 2 to make 5, you will find that to be able to have space for green infrastructure, which the university are demanding, which businesses demand, which homeowners demand, and have ability for walking spaces, and yesterday came up about high-speed cycle facilities rather than just crossing over roads, then we have to have the space in the city centre for all of this to happen. And it's absolutely clear that to be able to make that space available for what the demands are that everybody is asking for, we have to get as much traffic that does not need to be in the city centre out from it. The critical point is that we only have one river crossing that is functional. It's an ageing bridge. We have to have another bridge crossing, and that bridge crossing can only be joined to with road infrastructure to marry it into the strategic road network. So the answer to your question is we must have the bypass to be able to make the facilities available for the businesses and the people of Hereford, and to deal with the questions that I've asked and answered previously in this meeting. So thank you for your question. The bypass is a must to be able to make everything function. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Are there any other questions from members of the Cabinet? No? Councillor Powers, I think, has a question. Then Councillor Bartlett, and then Councillor Matthews. Councillor Powers.
I don't have a question, Leader, because we're not allowed to ask questions, but I do have the points from my group. Thank you. As we would expect, what we've heard today and what we've read in the reports to this meeting is all full of highly questionable claims and assertions, unevidenced, and ignoring Herefordshire Council's own data on traffic and movements. That said, we are grateful to Councillor Price and officers for the briefings held last week for, excuse me, to reactivate my machine, for the briefings held last week for the relevant ward members and parish councils.
As notified to Cabinet and officers yesterday, I was not able to provide my group's comments on this occasion in advance, as I normally aim to do. However, I trust that the following 5 points can be answered now in the meeting. On recommendation A, please explain how the, quote, regard to the feedback to the HTP Phase 1 consultation report, unquote, has taken account of the fact that only 46% of respondents were, quote, positive about the potential for a new bypass, unquote. And that is in the WSP report bullet 1 on page 23, page 49 of our agenda papers. Given that the only bypass under consideration is the western route, this minority percentage is described in the report as, quote, broad support for the principle of a bypass, unquote. And that's at para 6.2.2 on page 60. On recommendation B, please confirm that data and mapping from Brainton Parish Council's adopted neighbourhood development plan has been incorporated into the materials for the forthcoming HTP options consultation. This data and information is more comprehensive and up to date than the Council's or any other sources, and should therefore be the primary source to ensure that the consultation is based on correct information and is, as the consultants claim it will be, robust. Thirdly, please confirm that all ecology surveys on the proposed corridors have been completed to inform the Phase 2 consultation. Fourthly, please explain why 35 individual responses to Phase 1 consultation, quote, based on the templates provided on the Brainton Parish website, unquote, have been classed in the WSP report at paragraph 5.8 on page 56 as petitions. A petition is normally defined as, quote, a formal written request, typically one signed by many people appealing to authority in respect of a particular cause, unquote. And that's the Oxford English Dictionary definition of a petition. Finally, please confirm that the Phase 2 consultation will include the complementary sustainable and active travel measures in the Hereford Transport Package as identified in the timetable in Appendix D, quote, Phase 2 public consultation to present the possible bypass routes and walking, cycling, bus and public space improvements, unquote. And if this is not the case, please also confirm that these will be subject to a separate public consultation as required before the projected mid-2018 Phase 3 public consultation, and that these measures will also include park and ride provision for the city identified in the Phase 1 consultation as, quote, the most popular response to options to help manage Hereford's transport problems, unquote. And that's paragraph 5.3.32 on page 46. Thank you very much. I did email the text of these points to Mairead Lane and to the Cabinet member, albeit shortly before this meeting, but you do have the written text if you need to refer to that now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor, for your questions. You are correct. You only gave us a few minutes' notice of this, or I only got a few minutes' notice of it. The officers have provided with me with some responses to your questions, but I think what we will do, I'll try and answer what we've got so far, but we need to address this more fully outside of this meeting, because there's a lot of stuff you've asked for there that just needs a little bit more thought. So on your first bullet point, I know there is significant support for a bypass. For many years, this is what business and the public have consistently told us when we have consulted people. The percentage referred to relates to people answering question 20 of the HAP section of the Phase 1 consultation. Of the 166 people who answered this question, 46% responded, as you set out. 93% of those who responded to the HTP section, question 46 of the questionnaire, responded that traffic conditions in Hereford need to be improved, demonstrating the importance of transport infrastructure improvements. Studies have established that the appropriate transport improvements to deliver our objectives are a bypass with a package of walking, cycling, public transport and public space improvements. Further consultation will allow people to provide feedback to confirm if this is supported. On your next bullet point, yes, along with a range of other appropriate data sources, this consultation will also allow us to gather any further detailed information which will inform further work. On your third bullet point, our consultants have undertaken detailed surveys which have informed the short list of routes. Surveying will continue throughout the seasons and will inform the development of the environmental statement which will support the planning application. On your next bullet point, the content of these individual responses are set out in table 5.8, page 83 and 84 of the consultation report, and all responses were considered regardless of the definition you refer to. And on your last point, yes it will, this is covered in recommendation B of the Cabinet report. Fairly quick responses gathered in a few minutes before this meeting started, so I apologise if I haven't addressed every part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. I appreciate that you had much shorter notice than I customarily give, but no shorter notice of points or questions than colleagues often provide. I would also, for the record, note that this is the second Cabinet meeting within 8 days with an extremely substantial agenda. We have no minutes from the previous meeting, and by the same account, I don't think in the context it could be necessarily expected that I would be able to provide the points in the timely way that I normally do, as you know. Just to pick up on one thing very quickly in your answer.
You were given the opportunity to answer questions. They've been answered insofar as it's possible, and any further written enlargement on those will be forthcoming. Councillor Bartlett, do you have a question?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comment type questions. On page 12, 13, when we're looking at the key considerations, in the upcoming consultation, can we actually publish the journey times as they are at the moment, and what the acceptable peak hour journey times are going to be through the city on the A49, so people can actually look at the times that are involved rather than just having an overall, it will make things a lot better. Also, can we, alongside that, publish how quickly it takes to walk or cycle across the route, so they can make across the city, so they can make a more complete judgment on that. And also within the consultation, could you please provide some information on the final bullet point about improved road safety within the city? Why will this actually improve road safety? My other question really is about the status of the project and whether or not it's going to become a large project that goes to Secretary of State, and the fact that the main criteria seems to be adoption of the route by the Highway Authority, which would then make that the trunk road around the city. If they don't accept the new route and take that as the trunk route, we're going to be left with having to maintain the route ourselves out of our own highway budget. But more importantly, you have all these ideas about what you want to do within the city, and you can't do them until you've got the road around the outside. Without the A49, my understanding is without the A49 being detrunked, you don't actually have a huge amount of control over what you can do with that route. So all the ideas about what you want to do within the city could actually be snagged, because at the moment I can understand why the Highway Authority think it's a good idea to adopt this route instead of the route through the city. There's no real need for them to do that. They could just maintain the status quo.
Councillor Bartlett, do you have a question? I suspect there is one in there somewhere, but I can't detect it yet.
Have you factored into your inner city active travel measures the fact that you might not be able to do everything that you want if you don't have total control of the A49 across the bridge through the centre of the city?
Richard.
So, two parts to the question, I think. In terms of the data that you've asked for regarding journey times, yes, we'll be publishing that detail, and we'll make sure we pick up on those 3 points you referenced. In terms of the adoption or otherwise as a trunk road for the new bypass, that is a decision that is the preserve of the Secretary of State for Transport. So it's not in our hands to determine. However, we are discussing with both Department for Transport and Highways England the approach to that process. And as we've said previously, Highways England are supportive of the approach, and I think their view is that it logically would be the new trunk road, subject to obviously the Secretary of State's processes. Now, in terms of delivery of the improvements, either the bypass or indeed the improvements within the city, the fact that Highways England are working with us on this project should encourage us to think that even if it wasn't retrunked, they would be happy to see improvements alongside the bypass as set out in the consultation. So they're fully aware of the proposals that we're proposing to go out for consultation with, and they're supportive of the project.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Price, do you wish to add to that?
Yeah, I'm sure you've picked it up in other places, but Hereford Council, as part of a bid for opportunity to get advice and consultation free from a government scheme for active travel measures and cycling and walking, we have been awarded 30 days free consultation paid for by government, and it's very interesting that WSP, who are our contractors, have been awarded that national contract. So as part of the work that we're doing, we have a contractor that has been directed by government, who is absolutely our design consultant, will be delivering us that advice for 30 days on those very measures. And I cannot believe, and I think there's a representative of WSP here in the room today, that in their consultation with government, that they make sure that to be able to get the measures that they will be advising us on for cycling, walking, etc. in Hereford, that a prerequisite of that is that the A49 does transfer to the bypass when it's built. Personally, I'm sure that's going to be the case, but we still have to go through the process to make it happen. But just to alleviate you, I'm sure that the answer to your question is yes, it's all in hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, leave it to bear with me, because I do appreciate this comes right from my ward and it takes the brunt of the thing. So I've got a brief summary of points which I totally disagree with Councillor Price, and I expect you'd be expecting that. So if I can just read through that very briefly. Page 13 on the western route, reduced impact of air quality, noise and light pollution and CO2 emissions. Our own officers have frequently said the bulk of traffic will still go through the city centre, resolving very little in that respect. If you take this road through the high peaks of Brenton, exposed to strong westerly winds, the very problems you're trying to resolve will be hugely increased, plus you will cause untold damage to this area of outstanding natural beauty. Totally against the government thinking. Economic growth. Owing to the policies over recent years, the local economy has stagnated for the past 5 or 6 years because you have continually failed to listen to people who fully understand the economy and infrastructure. Requirements such as our highly valued businessmen. They have repeatedly told you that they require an eastern route and improvements to the A49 south. Then there is the strong possibility that no planning permission will be granted in Three Elms area because of the possible adverse effect on boreholes that could cause 2 of our largest businesses to close down or move out. Cargill's already located in Newent and several other counties nearby, so there's that danger of losing yet another valuable company. Then page 138, the Balfour Beatty report concludes, western route less of an environmental impact than the one to the east, although the same statutory protection is on both. To the west there are several grade 2 listed buildings, rare veteran trees which have been mentioned previously, and several properties that are affected. Eastern Route, no listed buildings, no mature trees. This report isn't worth the paper it's written on. A top consultant would rip it apart. So all I can say is that all I'll say is, Cabinet Member, when you ask consultants to do a report, you tell them what you want the outcome to be. So this isn't a consultant's report, it's your report. The Independence Chairman have always supported a bypass for the East, as all the experts who have been involved in the past have done so. There is clearly a recommendation, this would appear to me, to please the church commissioners for the favours that they may have done to lift the covenants on the market and greatly the land adjoining the market and greatly increase its value. It is the people of this county and the local economy which should come first. You're totally failing on both counts. Your proposals are going to put a further 25,000 vehicles on our already congested highways and cause even further damage to the local economy. We were promised 6,000 jobs. It's not moving because the business people keep telling you, Councillor Price, they want an eastern route. And whenever I've been down there with you, you know that when we put it to a vote, 80% have always supported an eastern route. The only reason they're showing a bit of favour to you because you told them that's not deliverable, which is totally incorrect. The jobs and houses...
Councillor, I think you've had long enough to make points. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just 3 lines.
3 lines and that's it?
Yeah. Without houses, with jobs, without jobs, houses will be occupied by retired people from off. Further pressure on adult social care and health services. All I can say, Councillor Price, is there's so much wrong with this. If you get top professional people looking at it, your chances of delivering it are extremely slim.
Hooray!
Councillor Price, I've got a couple of points I wish to make myself, but would you like to start?
I have listened to Councillor Matthews for some years on the same debate. I have always disagreed with his analysis of the points that he raises in the results to do it. I have said so many times that the eastern route is not an alternative. It gets across the river, but it does not marry to infrastructure to aid the solution that we're trying to achieve. I'm sure that my councillor colleague David Harlow will have a lot to say about your stagnated economy growth, because at this moment in time the enterprise zone is crying out to build and build more, and businesses lining up to come, and maybe Councillor Harlow would like to follow up that fact. But I disagree with what you're saying. Your inference that we're dealing with the church commissioners in a way to get benefits from them. Of course we will get benefits. We will want 106 benefits to help aid and cost the infrastructure that the growth of this city will need. So I'm sorry, but you know that I'm going to disagree with you, and you can wink at me as much as you like across the room. I know you expect me to disagree with you, and I do, and I will continue to do so. When you come up with something that is really positive, that I can get behind and support you, I will do. But in this case, I don't. Thank you.
Councillor Harlow.
Thank you, Leader. I must admit I don't recognise the picture that Councillor Matthews paints of the county's economy. Perhaps I could draw his attention to the employment statistics, which show that unemployment in Herefordshire is at almost a 20-year low. Just over 1,000 people in the whole of the county unemployed, which I think is tremendous news, and we ought to get behind and celebrate. And I would urge Councillor Matthews to do the bigger thing. I know he's taken a position on the enterprise zone for quite some time, and perhaps now's the time to admit that you were wrong, and it's been highly successful.
Thank you, Councillor. A couple of points I would add. I was going to talk about the stagnated economy, but that's been covered by Councillor Harlow. As far as business is said, we want a south-east route. I have personally taken the trouble to go around the businesses, and they all want a bypass. They don't particularly care whether it's east or west. A lot of people don't bother, but the only practical route we can take is west, and everybody knows why. I understand in your position I would feel concern, understandably. If you're going to have a new road around you, it represents uncertainty, you represent those people, and you're doing your job as you should. But the facts are that a western route is the only one that provides the total connectivity that we need. No one has ever made a case for, they try to present cases for these, they don't hang together, and that the road will bring more traffic, I find laughable. Everybody knows, if you sit and think for a moment, it won't matter whether we build the road or not. There will be considerably more traffic in 10, 20 years' time around here, whether or not we build the road. Somebody said today in the public questions that they'd seen a report that said there would be 8% more traffic on the road if we built it. And that may very well be the case. The point is, what you have to ask yourself is how much traffic will there be on there if you don't build the road? The implication that you'll get less traffic if you don't build the road, frankly, is risible. There will be traffic there anyway. We know, and we've had, not just BBLP looking at it, we've had two serious independent, and I stress, independent reports saying that is the way to go. The people sitting here in the Cabinet, including myself, we have no particular desire whether it should go left, right, underneath, over the top, or whatever. We have no reason to favour any one side over another. What we do is we look at professional evidence, carefully put together, proper, full reports with all considerations, and they tell us to go west. And west it will be. Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the Cabinet? No? Thank you. Then recommendations in front of you, Cabinet members, A, B and C. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, officers.